The afternoon sun rested gently over the wide prairie. It was one of those quiet days when the wind moved slowly through the tall grass, and the sky stretched wide and patient above the land. A weathered wooden wagon stood beside a dusty trail. One of its wheels had slipped loose, leaning awkwardly in the dirt. Nearby, a tall cowboy knelt beside it. His name was Caleb Turner. Caleb looked like a man who had spent most of his life outdoors. His broad shoulders carried the strength of years of hard work. A faded brown hat shaded his face, and a short beard framed a pair of thoughtful eyes. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing strong, calloused hands that had known ropes, reins, and tools since boyhood. But today, even those capable hands were having trouble. He tightened a bolt, then sighed softly. The wheel simply refused to sit right. A few yards away, a black horse stood patiently, occasionally flicking its tail and shifting its weight. The horse seemed calmer than the man. Caleb leaned back on his heels and wiped the sweat from his forehead. Well, he murmured to himself with a tired smile, this old wagon and I might both be getting a little too old. Just then, footsteps approached along the trail. A young woman walked slowly toward the wagon, carrying a small canvas bag slung across her shoulder. Her name was Lena Carter. Lena looked travel-worn but determined. Her dark brown hair had been loosely tied back, though a few strands had escaped and moved gently in the breeze. Dust marked the hem of her simple gray shirt and dark trousers, but her posture was steady. She was the kind of person who noticed when someone needed help. When she saw the tilted wagon wheel, she paused. "Looks like that wheel's giving you a stubborn time," she said softly. Caleb glanced up, surprised. For a moment he seemed unsure whether to laugh or apologize for the mess. "You could say that," he replied with a warm chuckle. "Been fighting with it half the afternoon." Lena stepped closer and knelt beside him without hesitation. "Mind if I take a look?" Caleb shrugged kindly. "Be my guest. At this point, I'd welcome a miracle." Lena studied the wheel quietly. She brushed dirt away from the axle and adjusted the wooden spokes gently. Her movements were calm and practiced. Caleb watched her, curious. "You've done this before," he said. "My father ran freight wagons when I was young," Lena replied. "I spent half my childhood holding tools and tightening bolts." She shifted the wheel slightly and pointed. "The axle pins misaligned. If you lift the wagon just a little, I think I can guide it back." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Well, I'll be." Together they worked. Caleb lifted the side of the wagon with careful strength while Lena steadied the wheel. Slowly, patiently, she guided the axle into place. There was a soft clunk. The wheel slid perfectly into position. Both of them paused. Then Caleb let out a long breath and laughed, a deep, genuine laugh that echoed across the prairie. "Well, I'll be," he said again. "You just saved this old wagon's pride." Lena smiled shyly and wiped the dust from her hands. Sometimes things just need a second pair of eyes. Caleb stood and brushed off his trousers. "Miss, I owe you thanks. Name's Caleb Turner." He offered a hand. She shook it politely. "Lena Carter." The handshake was simple, but there was kindness in it. Caleb reached into his coat pocket. "Least I can do is pay you for the help." But Lena gently shook her head. "No need." "You sure? Helping someone isn't something you charge for," she said softly. Caleb looked at her for a moment, studying the quiet sincerity in her voice. It reminded him of something his mother used to say long ago. Sometimes kindness came from strangers who expected nothing in return. "Well," he said with a warm nod, "then I suppose I'll just say thank you properly." Lena gave a small smile. "That'll do." They spoke for a few minutes longer beneath the warm sun. About the road. About the weather. About how quiet the prairie could be when the wind settled down. Then Lena picked up her bag. "I should keep moving. Still have miles before sundown." Caleb tipped his hat respectfully. "Safe travels, Miss Carter." "And good luck with the rest of the wagon," she replied. With that, she walked down the trail. Her figure slowly became smaller against the endless grassland. Caleb watched for a moment before returning to his wagon. Something about that brief meeting lingered quietly in his thoughts. The prairie had a way of bringing people together for small moments, and then sending them on their way again. By evening, Caleb had repaired the rest of the wagon. He drove back to his ranch just as the sky turned a soft shade of amber. The day settled into silence. Morning arrived slowly the next day. The sun rose gently over the hills, painting the land with pale gold light. Caleb stepped onto his porch holding a tin cup of coffee. The ranch was peaceful. Too peaceful. Then he heard something unusual. The distant creaking of wooden wheels. Caleb shaded his eyes and looked toward the road. A wagon was approaching. But this was not an ordinary wagon. It was larger than most, polished carefully, with strong horses pulling it and neatly stacked crates in the back. It rolled slowly toward the ranch gate before stopping. A well-dressed older driver stepped down. Caleb walked closer, puzzled. "Morning," he said. The driver nodded respectfully. "Morning, Mr. Turner." Caleb blinked. "You know me?" "Yes, sir." The man stepped aside and gestured toward the wagon. "These supplies were sent here, for you." Caleb frowned. "Supplies?" "Tools, grain, lumber, and parts for your ranch equipment." Caleb stared at the crates. "That must be some mistake." The driver shook his head with a gentle smile. "No mistake." He reached into his coat and handed Caleb a small envelope. Caleb opened it slowly. Inside was a short handwritten note. The handwriting was simple but careful. He read it quietly. "Mr. Turner. Yesterday you thanked me for helping with your wagon. But the truth is, you helped me too. It reminded me that kindness still lives on quiet roads. You once helped my family many years ago without knowing who we were. My father never forgot it. The ranch you saved back then was ours. Please accept this small gesture of gratitude. Lena Carter." Caleb stood silently. The morning breeze moved through the tall grass around him. Memories slowly surfaced. Years earlier, a struggling rancher. A broken wagon. A small girl standing beside her father. Caleb had fixed their wheel and refused payment. He had completely forgotten. But someone else had not. The driver cleared his throat gently. "Miss Carter owns several ranches now," he explained. "Very successful cattle business." Caleb folded the note carefully. He looked out across the prairie again. Sometimes the smallest acts traveled farther than a man could imagine. He smiled quietly. "Well," he said softly, "that young lady grew up just fine." The driver nodded. "Kindness tends to grow that way." The wagon rolled away not long after, leaving behind supplies, and a quiet reminder. Caleb sat on his porch later that afternoon, watching the wind ripple through the grass. He thought about how life worked in slow circles. A favor given without expectation. A memory carried through the years. And a kindness returned when it was least expected. For people who had lived long enough to see life's seasons come and go, there was comfort in that thought. Because sometimes the good we send out into the world doesn't disappear. Sometimes, it simply waits for the right road to bring it back home.